Hello, I'm Ania Lichtarowicz, and this is Somewhere on Earth, your weekly look at technology and its impact on our everyday lives. It is Tuesday, the 11th of August 2026. Welcome to the Global Tech Podcast. Coming up today. A flying boat taking on one of the world's toughest transport challenges, the Amazon. In a region where rivers are often the only roads, journeys to healthcare and essential services can take hours or even days. Now, one Brazilian company is developing a vehicle that flies just meters above the water, travelling at up to 150 kilometres an hour. And then a very different challenge, endometriosis. Around 190 million women and girls worldwide live with this chronic disease, yet diagnosis can take years. We'll hear how one entrepreneur who experienced that journey herself is using an app, AI and health data to help people understand their symptoms, prepare for medical appointments and advocate for better health. From flying over the Amazon to tracking what's happening inside your own body, technology is increasingly being used to tackle problems that traditional systems have struggled to solve. This is Somewhere on Earth, where tech meets humanity. If you look at a map of the Amazon, you might think that all those enormous rivers should make getting around relatively easy. But for millions of people living in remote communities, the river is often the only transport link. They have. There are a few roads, and journeys by conventional boat can take many hours or even days. Research into healthcare access in remote Brazil has found patients travelling more than 1,000 kilometres and spending more than 20 hours getting to medical services. In some parts of the Amazon, reaching Manaus for healthcare can mean a 6 or 7 hour day boat journey. And there's another problem. The rivers themselves are increasingly vulnerable to extreme drought. When water levels fall, boats can no longer navigate some routes, leaving communities cut off from essential supplies and services. So what if you could keep the river as your route, but dramatically increase the speed? That's the idea behind Aeroriver's flying boat. It looks a little like an aircraft, but flies just a few metres above the surface of the water. I met the company's CEO at Web Summit Rio to find out how it works and why he thinks it could change life for people living deep in the Amazon.
I am Lucas Guimarães from Aeroriver. I am CEO of Aeroriver.
So tell me a little bit about this technology.
Okay. We call it flying boat. It looks like an airplane, but it flies in a very low height, about 2 to 5 meters over the water. And because of this, there is an aerodynamic phenomenon that appears called ground effect that turns the vehicle 40% more efficient than flying higher. And because it's flying a very low height, it's considered a boat, not an airplane. So the cost of development and operation is very, very low.
Okay, that's not an answer I was expecting to hear. Okay. We're standing just right next to a simulator to show you how it works, but to get my head straight around this has got, you're calling it a flying boat, yeah? It flies literally a few meters above the water, and you don't have to go through all the regulation of an aircraft.
Yeah, it's regulated by IMO, that regulates the maritime, or it's an international maritime organization. So it's really considered a boat, not an airplane.
Okay, so a flying vehicle that is considered a boat. Again, trying to get my head around that. Why have you developed this?
Yeah, we are from the Amazon region, so we have a lack of transportation there. We have no roads connecting the cities. The aerial transportation is very expensive. So the people make trips or travel using boats. But boats are very slow vehicles, about 20 to 30 kilometers per hour. So this vehicle is very fast. It flies in 150 kilometers per hour, and it can carry 10 passengers or 1 ton of cargo.
Okay, so again, I'm a bit mind blown at this. So you've got a really fast vehicle that isn't going to need a lot of regulation to pass before you can get it out there, and can carry 10 passengers and a considerable amount of cargo. How much of an impact do you think this is going to have?
Yeah, we know that the impact is giant because this vehicle, the emission of CO2 is 40% less than usual airplanes, and it can go in a bigger range than usual airplanes or usual boats. So we can access the communities in the interior of Amazon region, and we can help these people that lives in there because they have no transportation to go out or to look for medication or hospitals.
Now, just a little bit kind of negative about this. I assume it's over water and only over water, so you have to follow the rivers.
Yeah, we have to follow the rivers, but the rivers in the Amazon region are giant, so kilometers of extension. So you can fly like you are flying over the ocean. It's really big.
Now tell me about the technology.
Okay. This vehicle is considered a ground effect vehicle because the height of it flies. And because of this, the drag is lower and the lift is superior than the usual airplanes. So the aerodynamic efficient is very high. So this is the biggest difference of this vehicle when compared to airplanes.
Okay, so again, a little bit stunted as to what to say. It does sound amazing. You've got the little simulator in here, haven't you? And it's now being pushed around to see how it can travel one way or the other. What about costs? Because this looks quite expensive.
Yeah, it's 6% cheaper than airplanes.
6%.
6%.
6%, okay.
Yeah, and about 10 to 15 expensive than the boats.
Okay.
So the cost is very, very low, really low.
I mean, it's very comparable then, isn't it? And what kind of an impact do you think this will have on people's lives?
Yeah, the people in the Amazon region has no transportation to live. Usually they live in their cities and be isolated there. So we are looking to offer an opportunity for these people go out and look for new opportunities or make their business grow up and look for colleges or better education, for example. This is our hope.
It's your hope, and when is your hope to get this actually out in the field, out in the Amazon?
In the next year, we are building the first vehicle now, the first full-scale prototype, and it will be ready this year. So the next year, it will be already operating.
Okay, so when I come back to Brazil for Web Summit Rio next year, are you going to take me for a trip?
Yeah, for sure. You're invited.
Okay, somewhere on Earth is going to be there. Is there anything else you would like to tell me?
Yeah, we are looking for investors at this moment because we are finishing to build the first parts of the vehicle. And for the next year, we are planning to build our factory. So we are looking for investors to help us to build our factory.
Lucas, thank you very much for joining us on Somewhere on Earth and showing us this amazing simulator. I might actually have a go in a little bit if that's okay.
Thank you.
And I will put up a video on our YouTube channel soon, Somewhere on Earth, the Global Tech Podcast, with me trying out the simulator. Endometriosis is a chronic disease in which tissue, similar to the lining of the womb, grows outside the uterus. It can cause severe pelvic pain, heavy bleeding, fatigue, painful sex and problems with fertility, but it can also affect other parts of the body and have a significant impact on someone's physical and mental well-being. The World Health Organization estimates that endometriosis affects around 10% of women and girls of reproductive age worldwide, around 190 million people. The WHO also says that the disease is often underdiagnosed and that there can be a significant delay between the onset of symptoms and diagnosis. And that delay matters. Many women spend years being told that severe period pain is normal or that their symptoms are unrelated. That's something both my guest and I know about personally. My guest is Gemma Bowles, founder of Endí. She developed severe symptoms as a teenager, including pain so intense that she would faint, be sick and spend days in bed. She was eventually diagnosed with endometriosis in 2019. I've had a similar experience. I was diagnosed after years of severe pain and bleeding and being told that my symptoms were essentially in my head. So Endí was born out of a very personal experience, but it's also an attempt to use technology to tackle a much bigger problem. The platform allows people to track their symptoms, medical history and cycles, upload medical records and prepare for medical appointments. It uses AI to identify patterns in the information users record and help them ask better questions and advocate for themselves. And there is another potentially important element: data. Endí says it already has 77,000 anonymous health data points, which could eventually help researchers investigate patterns in endometriosis and associated conditions. But that immediately raises a question that is particularly important when we're talking about intimate health data. Who owns that information, who can access it, and how can it be used safely?
So Endí is a health platform that is mainly for endometriosis, but also helps other similar chronic conditions. And it's a place that users can go on, they can track and record their day-to-day health, but with really deep insights. They can get AI insights back through the more they track. They can upload doctor's appointments and also prepare for doctor's appointments. So we give them advice and options, questions that they could ask and better advocate for themselves. They can upload all their medical history. So it's an easy place if they are in an appointment, rather than, scrolling through a huge folder of information, they can just access the tests, the previous tests and things that they need. There's also a store there where people can access cheaper promotional products for period care and support care. And there's an overview of your cycle and some mental health support on there.
Right, so it's a kind of a one-stop shop. You put all your information on there about your endometriosis journey. But let's kind of roll back a little bit and talk about why you've developed this platform and a little bit about your endometriosis journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to say I'm 39 years young now. But since I first developed my periods, which was early teens, I was kind of always told that my periods would be awful. So I was always expecting them to be very painful and very sore. So I didn't really think that was anything abnormal, but that as I got older, they got worse and worse. And I was finding that I was passing out from the pain. I was being sick from the pain. I was having to, take 2 to 3 days in bed from severe pain and fatigue. And going around to doctor's appointment with huge ring binder folders of all my, previous medical records, just trying to look for answers. So it wasn't until about 2019, it was actually my dad mentioned, have you heard of this thing called endometriosis? Well, he probably didn't say it quite like that. It's a difficult word to say. And that's when we started then looking into it. But again, it took time. I think it took a long time to find the right people to speak to. And I was in the end diagnosed at the end of 2019 by an MRI with endometriosis.
We met at an event and got talking because I've also had endometriosis. I am a little bit older than you at 51. And I was only diagnosed because I was told I was making things up, that I wasn't telling the truth, that it was all in my head. My very severe pains, my very severe bleeding, my very severe impact, really, that not only happened during my period, but throughout the month as well. And I was only diagnosed, I was still under my dad's private medical insurance. And basically the consultant said, I'll do you keyhole surgery, and because it's been paid for. And I never got actually, sorry that I told you were a liar or you were making it up. And I was diagnosed with endometriosis, and quite a lot of women are. I think many of our listeners would be surprised at how many women actually do have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a number out there that they say 1 in 10. Actually looking into it, I'm not actually sure where that number comes from. I think it's kind of a guess, and the recent studies from Australia, for there at least, is saying 1 in 7 and maybe even more, because the the trouble is it takes on average 9 years to get diagnosed, at least in the Western world. So there's also a lot of women that won't know that they have it yet. So the reality is really, even from speaking to people in the work that I do, it's probably 1 in 3, I would say, is affected by this or, a very similar condition. So it's a huge amount. They say it's more common than diabetes and asthma. So it's a huge effect on people in the world.
And like so many conditions that impact women, it is very under-researched. That's why we know so little about it. And I guess this is where your platform kind of comes in a way, because doctors themselves don't know really what could be a symptom of endometriosis, what could be impacting your health. And I think, not only is it great for managing your own personal symptoms and keeping you on track, but also informing doctors and getting them to learn too.
Where Endí is at the moment is that we're in a really great place to build from. So at the minute, we're live on Apple and Android in 16 languages across the world. At the minute, it kind of focuses on the user and how they can advocate for themselves and learn, their real deep insights for themselves and their patterns. But there is an aspect where we'll start bringing in a lot more information and working with partners in the NHS, hopefully, and in the private healthcare, and also businesses, for places of work or even for family members and things like this, just offering a lot of more support and information that they can understand. A new feature we're actually just about to launch is a partner feature. So whether that's a friendship, a family relationship or a romantic relationship, they will have access to how you're feeling or whatever you grant, and they can learn a bit more about where you are month to month and how you're feeling, and if there's any way that they can support you too. So we'll be building out a lot more in the way of information in the coming months.
And the technology is really enabling you to do this, because a lot of kind of people think that endometriosis is just something that affects women for a few days a month. That although it is often described as internal bleeding outside the womb, we are now beginning to know it's much more complicated than that it can affect, many different systems in the body. Yet the information isn't there, is it? So the tech is really key in all of this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so key. So, for example, we already have around 77,000 anonymous data, health data points on our app. This is a thing that we've worked with medical data scientists to look at what they really need to know for research. And we're hoping to use this data to, look for treatments for people, look for better cures, look for is there patterns in other areas that people haven't looked before, because it is so under-researched. So we really use AI as well within that, identifying personal patterns to just see if there's any correlation that may have been missed. I think that's, again, it's such a huge thing around the world that there might be kind of data, but none of it is longitudinal data so far. And that's something that we're hoping to use. We're very different from other platforms and other period trackers because the user stores everything on their own cloud. So it's only an opt-in version. If they want to opt in for us to get anonymous data as well, we can. So it's a very private, secure way to do it. But I'm really hoping that with this data that we'll be able to do some real good in the world and kind of look for more in-depth options of what's going on with people, basically.
And that's a really important aspect of it, because there are so many products out there, particularly period trackers, etc., that aren't careful with your data, do sell it to other bodies, and there is a real concern by women that this very private information could go elsewhere, yet yours is secure. What will happen, say, if a user was to say, actually, yeah, you know what, use my data for research? Talk to me through that. What actually happens with your information?
Yeah, so at the minute we're just building that data up at the minute, and we're still working on what is the most relevant for what medical researchers need. So we're still kind of fine-tuning that. But thereafter we'll be working with companies, but ones that, are completely vetted. We're working with people that have experience in this area. I'm going out to places like I'm in touch with people. There's an amazing Edinburgh University. There's an amazing endometriosis research lab. Same in Sydney, in Australia. They are very much looking into endometriosis. So there's certain places that I would love to collaborate with who can really use that data to then look for, just any correlation between kind of different symptoms and different patterns that people haven't noticed before, because it is a comorbidity, disease or chronic illness, whatever you want to call it. And it's so important that we also recognize that, a lot of people have POTS or, a chronic fatigue and things like this. And it's just not necessarily, I think we need to look at it as a whole body condition rather than just, like a gynae condition, because it's much more than that. So that's why I'm hoping this data will go out to the right people, and then they can look at the patterns within that and see if there's correlation between these different illnesses, basically.
Thank you for listening. That is it for this week, unless you subscribe to the Pod Extra version of the show, where we have more from Gemma and where she hopes the Endí platform will go next. So if you would like to have an extended and ad-free version of the show, please type into your search engine pod.fan, Somewhere on Earth, the global tech podcast, and for $10 a month, that is exactly what you will get. And if you can't subscribe, then please leave us a rating on your podcasting platform. This really helps our visibility on those platforms. I'm Ania Lichtarowicz, and this is Somewhere on Earth, the global tech podcast. Until next week, bye-bye.